Hey, welcome everybody. Excited to be here with you today. And actually, it was pretty fun going through and listening to Tim's presentation because a little history about myself. I began my lean journey back in 2007, late 2007. We were a pilot plant, and I'll talk a little bit more about that at our Ogden, Utah facility. That's where I began my lean journey, and got really into all the terminology I could. Just tried to eat it all up. And over the years, I think things have changed, within the company as they often do, through different leadership, through different reorgs, and things like that. And I haven't heard a lot of the great fundamental terms used again. So I love somebody just throwing out, Muda in the chat and things like that. And I'm like, I miss hearing some of that often. So I'm excited to be here with you all today and get back into a little of those fundamentals as well. So I work for Kimberly Clark, and in my history, I've been a lean coordinator, internal lean coordinator, and a portfolio manager, a process engineer, quality, all those kind of things. These days, I guess my title is something like an innovation technology specialist. So I own a global innovation software metrics and information and things like that around our innovation projects around the globe. So that's my most recent role. So that's what it says there, in global research and engineering. But I've also been in our marketing and strategy office recently as well. Just in case you don't know Kimberly Clark, you probably know our brands. As you can see from some of the stats up there, a quarter of the world's population uses one of our products every day. So things like Huggies and Scott and Cottonelle and Andrex, Kotex, Depend, pull-ups, etc. So all kinds of things all around the world that we have. So big, broad company in all kinds of different countries, all kinds of different functions. Some are smooth together and some are disjointed together. And you could imagine that over time, when we really talk about collaboration, right, and quick scaling of projects from one area to another or one region to another, communication and bringing things together is critical. And that's, again, part of what I'll talk about with some of our evolution here. So I'll just hit you with a couple of the key thoughts that I want you to take away today. So maybe you catch them throughout the presentation, and I'll bring them back up at the end as well today. So one thing, and I think it was even brought up in a question in one of Tim's, was like, I'm going to talk a little bit about digital visual management and collaboration versus paper visual management, if you will, in our evolution there. And what I really want you to take away is, I think, even though I started out as a fundamentalist, if you will, and taught you don't put anything in the computer, it's got to be up on the wall, you got to interact with it, you got to touch it, right? As I've come right over the years here with the tool, I find it's more efficient, more effective. It enables engagement even better throughout the organization. And I'll talk about this a little later and really outline it, but it kind of really builds on that respect for people foundation in ways you may not have thought about when you're thinking about going digital. So those are a few of the things that I really want you to take away today. 1 second, let me adjust this. Okay. All right. So just start out with this great reminder that so many of you already know, right? Visual management is a key principle of a well-managed process in a lean environment, right? So I just love the little triangle that I learned on the right. I just used it the other day with somebody. It's still something that makes sense, right? We see together, we know together, we act together, right? So if we all see it, if we all know it, it's so much quicker and so much more effective to make change, to make actions happen, to react to change, things like that. So how do we really kind of display those things visually, standards, so that everybody understands it the same way? You don't have different assumptions or different experience levels coming up with different things. And how do you get that out there just in front of everybody, right? So it's just one of those key principles that's in there for effective. So I talked a little bit about, hey, back in 2007, I kind of started my lean journey. So I recall kind of before that point, or actually near that point. So diaper assets and pull-ups assets are pretty interesting when you see them for the first time. And it's really amazing to see, over between 500 and 1,000 or more products just flying off the line per minute, right? These little products are just being made at rates you couldn't imagine. And it's a continuous operation, not a batch operation. And so I remember walking into the plant one day early in the morning for turnover between shifts, and teams were all excited because our one asset had set a record production night, right? They had made the most diapers ever made in a shift anywhere in the corporation in one single day or one single shift. I forget what it was. So everybody was cheering, celebrating, and they really talked about, boy, we only had 5 minutes of downtime, right? So that was kind of some of the mentality of that, well, of our corporation, but also of our plant at the time. So fast forward, maybe, even just a few months into our lean journey, as we, read some books, got taught by some of our key consultants, things like that. And boy, we look back and said, oh, we're terrible idiots, right? And when I said this story in front of a group, everybody kind of says, yep, nods their head. So when we set that record, yeah, we only had 5 minutes of downtime, but that means we didn't really get to all the critical planned downtime we needed to perform the right maintenance, to perform the right actions, so that we didn't cause a much bigger unplanned downtime on another shift and have a crazy break in the schedule. Also, we learned when we really look back at that record, as an example that people brought up, that particular code that we were producing, that SKU, we had 100 days of inventory on hand for. 100 days of inventory on hand, and we were working there and setting records on production on it. Whereas we actually had other codes where we only had 10 days of inventory on hand, and we had customer service issues going on. So we had a long way, just like everybody does when they start this journey and really start opening their eyes to really understanding what's important, if you will, for long-term sustainability. And it's just so much greater when you move there. So as we went kind of through our lean journey in the manufacturing environment where I started, and really where lean started in Kimberly Clark, again, that's kind of why I'm starting here. We really implemented, this beautiful structured plant morning turnover process, visual management at the center of every step, whether it was from assets to engineering to plant turnover to management turnover, a daily structured function, real clear expectations by every cross-functional resource there. And making things visible really helped us understand what is that clear plan of the day that we're going after, what are our clear priorities, what do we have to do to really keep the machines running and producing to target, not over target, not under target, but producing to target, which really talks about focusing on the value added piece of it, right? It's where the product is made is on those machines. And so we'd start the day with that. And then we'd move towards later in the day with our improvement activities or our long-term project activities. So it was quite the shift, if you will. And again, where I kind of started with a lot of my learning and application. Over time, really, again, kind of in the manufacturing environment, really worked on the operational excellence framework. And this is probably a bit outdated, or maybe it's still, the fundamentals are still there, right? But organizational objectives being shared across the plants versus fighting each other or not sharing information in order to be competitive, right? And be recognized as the best plant out of the others. Much bigger focus in, hey, what can we all do to improve together for the entire corporation, right? So that team mentality. We would have lots of Kaizen events. We're bringing in people from different plants, operators, to share their knowledge with other operators, to dive in, to help design the next machine, right? The next module, something like that. So we'd be bringing those people together. So all kinds of different coordination activities going there. Everybody got into visual management everywhere in the manufacturing environment. And what can we do to really work on achieving some step change improvements? And just a quote that I recall, right? Without these tools in place, the overall systems will struggle to be sustainable. And we've seen it time and time again, and many of you have probably seen it time and time again. You get somebody or some group that's excited, put something in place, and it does great for a while, but maybe that person moves off, or maybe an objective changes and you lose it, right? So what do you really do to put standards in place that are sustainable? Very critical. So that was from 2007 to about mid 2010, and then we moved back here, me and my family, to the Neenah area. And so in Neenah, we have more of the research and engineering, as well as many other functions in the area. It's one of our big hubs of an office staff environment. And I came back ready and raring to go, excited in my quality group to say, here we go. I get to be on the front end helping to implement lean here in the staff environment, because I'm in a group that works very closely with the plants. They're on this journey. This director wants to bring these groups on this journey as well. So came back all excited. And it was, it was tough. It was tough to go from the manufacturing environment where waste is easily visible, easily seen, and sometimes easily actioned and very repeatable on a regular quick cycle basis, to some of these R&E processes take months or some even years to cycle, if you will. And how do you see change? How do you see improvement in that kind of a time? I used to go sit and watch the line and pick out waste within minutes, right? And what can we do to improve, come up with ideas in the manufacturing environment. In the office, I walk around and, you know, what's the real value added waste to go after if you're not just talking about, you know, people walking to the copier or things like that. It's really hard to understand in knowledge work what people are doing, what the process is, and where opportunity lies. Sometimes, I went up a couple times and said, "Can I just watch what you're doing for a while?" Right? To some of my folks on my team, let me learn what you're doing, and we do it, and we talk about it, and be like, I'd ask why, right? Why are you doing that? I don't know. Oh, you don't know? Okay, well, that's good. Let's explore that, right? And it's amazing what kind of waste we cut simply by asking why people are doing things. And it's just things that they've been doing for a long time, things ingrained in their jobs, things ingrained when they were trained, et cetera. So it was definitely tougher. So it was really like this question of, do lean principles really and truly work everywhere, right? Even in a research environment. And the answer is they do. It just takes a little bit of different mindset, a little bit of different examples to help people see waste, help people see the values. The process isn't always readily visible. Over time, here in our group at least, we made a ton of progress in making the work visible, the processes visible, and really just building this culture of stand-up meetings. So you see us here in a hallway with all kinds of paper stuff all over the wall. So this was our Obeya for our leadership team. So these are the key things that we were focused on for the year, the key areas, key objectives, things along those lines. So yeah, we did a lot of great things. We were building, when people talk agile, it's very, very similar in nature. We talked about rapid learning cycles, right, within our innovation. And so that was a process we started to really build in and do more with. And so people got excited about that, and they got excited about putting it up in visual management on paper. And so they really utilized that to keep timelines. But I mean, what was happening? Well, here actually, and so one thing we found that was as a result of this process was, and when you really talk about the value in R&E is created knowledge, documented technical knowledge, things like that. We saw our knowledge documentation fly, right, way back up, and been down for several years for various reasons. But doing this process really helped us keep on top of that and get things done. So we really put visual management kind of everywhere. And this is just examples of on cube walls, on walls, in the hallways, in people's cubes, things along those lines. And again, this was back probably in the 2012 to 2016 range for this group that we really evolved and did a lot of this. We've gone a lot more open office concept from since then, but I speak about cubes quite a bit in offices. So visual management is not without its cons, right? It does take up space, and it's kind of like single use. So if I'm a project that meets twice a week, I take up all this space on the wall. I'm only there X number of minutes per week, right? So that space utilization is actually kind of low. If you have a room, right, perhaps in Obeya where you have several projects on the wall in visual management, then then your utilization of that space is either you have to schedule it, or really it's again still not a high utilization just for things on the wall if you're only meeting on a less frequent basis. So how do you really kind of drive to that multi-use and increase utilization? The space for the meetings isn't always perfect. Sometimes you're next to people working. Sometimes you're in a really thin hallway and people are spread out. If it's a large group, you can't really see stuff on the board, right? So we kind of came to this area where we had a lot of converging factors and started to lead to some concerns for us, right? As we really talked about scaling this up. So we loved our continuous improvement culture. We were increasing it all over the place. Every rapid learning cycle project that came up started to say, I need a space on the wall. Let's put you here. I need a space on the wall. Let's put you over there. I need a space on the wall. How about downstairs, right? Next to this other team. And so we just saw it grow and spread, right? Which was good because there was a lot of benefit to it, as I mentioned. But it's really started to become the way we do work. Then came, especially for this group that I was in, of all this visual management, a big workplace renovation was done. So I mentioned open concept. So we are losing all the wall space, all the hallway space. We had this opportunity to build design multi-use spaces. So what we're going to do. And then we had continued, and I mentioned this earlier, like connected teams, connected objectives between plant and staff teams, driving a lot more increased interaction. Increased collaboration. We're starting to get it, and back then we were starting to get an increasing number of people working remotely. Nothing, of course, like we've seen in the last couple of years. So these multi-site teams were also becoming more common. So again, if I think about, I mentioned, we're in all kinds of different countries around the world, but here we are in Neenah, Wisconsin. Here we are, one floor of one building. I showed you pictures. We had over 200 pieces of paper visual management on the walls, on the cube walls. So you could imagine what that might be via scale. So again, we had these concerns, and now I'll say this convergence of factors kind of leads to our digital evolution. So when we were doing that redesign of the multi-use spaces, we're like, how are we going to get all this, paper visual management on the walls? Are we going to do a little poster flip through things like you see at Walmart or at other stores, where you just flip to your group's paper visual management for that day? Or are you going to do an engineering drawing thing where you pull out your visual management and put it on the wall and then put it back? And then at the time we discovered the iObeya collaboration tool. And I won't lie, when I discovered it, I was kind of like a little skeptical. I'm like, guys, this is not what we were taught. This is not what we've taught people. We said we have to be manual, visual, together, stand up. Are we going to be able to do this, right? So we had concerns about going digital, but I'll tell you, in the end, those concerns were pretty unfounded because we've found it to be excellent. So that's really what's led us to iObeya over the past 6 years. So lots of effective applications even beyond these, but these were some of the initial big areas. Project management certainly was a big one. Stand-up coordination meetings. I mentioned rapid learning cycles. I'll talk about visual decision-making here. Problem solving was a big one, and even strategy deployment, especially when we had budget cuts for travel. How do we do strategy deployment to really bring people together and work together and collaborate? So here's an example. So just call it project timeline development. So what was the before for us? So this was, and we've been doing it for 15, 20 years. Talked to the guy who implemented it, right? One of the trainers. Put up this huge, large paper grid on the wall, dates across the top, cross-functional work streams down the side. Everybody would come together, whether you're in different sites, come together, you write down all your tasks on Post-its placed up on that grid, start looking for those conflicts and opportunities, discuss and take action, right? When what I see them do, right, they go through, they tape down all the Post-its to this giant roll of paper, and then they hand that giant piece of paper over to someone, like an assistant or like a project leader or something like that, to translate it to Excel or sometimes into project or something else, right? And so maybe if they didn't have too much else going on, 2 to 3 days later, you kind of had a usable file as an output of this big, huge meeting that was critical, very important for our projects coming together. So what's it like with iObeya? And this is still one of our biggest, most popular uses of the tool. I'd say our timeline development meetings, efficiency-wise, were cut in half. team members don't have to travel for, sometimes it might be a half or a 1 day meeting. So you're saving on cost, which is wonderful. But it's great for the team members as well that they don't have to travel. And you can still add the post-its even if you're unable to attend. So it's something that you can do at any time, anywhere. If you're in a different time zone, maybe you're doing it at 2 a.m. US time, and we come in the morning and we see your post-its there and there, and we can still get your information and input. I found that when everybody's working on the tool at the same time and things are flying up on the digital board all together, issues are found in real time and adjusted quickly and through speaking as people are talking either on the phone or in the room, versus usually you'd kind of wait until everything was up on the wall just to find an issue. And then with the digital tool, that timeline is usable right as you leave the room. You can report out on it to leadership. You can talk with vendors about it, anything like that whenever you're ready. So just a big, huge efficiency and effectiveness improvement here that we've seen. So just to call out here, right, when we talk about our processes and going digital and what are we going to lose, the team is still executing the exact same process they did before. They're just doing it in a better way, right? Here's just various examples of timelines, and I of course have blocked out or blanked out anything specific, but you can see these are all post-its and things like that. So we talked a little bit about project management, stand-up coordination meetings. Again, whether when you're working with different sites, multi-sites, I said the plants here, right? They can participate in these project coordination meetings where they really couldn't before. They can move, add, and edit notes right along with the staff team or different functions. Team members can update from their desks or while home or while traveling. They don't have to walk across from building to building to go and do it physically. And we built some touch screens in, so technically if we wanted, you can still kind of execute that in a stand-up, get-together environment. Just another example of a stand-up coordination meeting. So lots of variety as to how you're able to design your meetings and boards. I talked about rapid learning cycles a lot. So many initiatives, they didn't really have that discipline to move towards those objectives. And by putting this together, everyone could kind of see the upcoming schedule. They could really track, hey, are we doing this documented technical knowledge? And actually you can just link, we're just open up the OneNote right in the meeting and discuss the trial report, make decisions, move forward. So it really reduced the need for a lot of follow-up actions and meetings. So very effective there as well. And again, so linking in that documentation process has just driven that creation of more value added knowledge, right? So that strengthens our future for the organization. Visual decision making, this is a fun one, I think. So we have our stage gate approval process for innovation over the years. It's actually kind of a global standard process, which you don't get very often in a company like ours, something that all regions really execute kind of the same way. And you get the whole leadership team together, and the president of the BU business unit is the #1 decision maker, but they like to get the collaboration from the whole team. And what you kind of had was teams would come in for their 20 to 30 minute time slot. It felt like a tribunal. You'd sit across the table from this leadership team, and they'd try and kind of share their whole project story from the beginning, and leaders would cut in with questions. Every leader wanted to be heard and get their risks heard and their questions heard, things like that. So what I implemented was a process where when we send the pre-reads out to the leaders are required to go right in here and put their questions in for the team to see. So the team can actually see the leaders asking questions, and the team can see what kind of environment they're walking into. If they got a lot of green check marks, they're feeling pretty good that the projects might be approved. And if they got a lot of big question marks and lots of questions on the board, they know they might need to do some follow-up, either before the discussion or mark it for follow-ups after the discussion. So it's actually been, like I talked about, respect for people, right? This is a great process that it's a respect for the project team. They feel just a lot better going into a session, know what they're walking into. They can answer questions ahead of time or have the answers if they have them, or it's just a lot better for them. And it's also respect for the leadership team. If a leader really wants to get that thought they had out, but they don't want to keep extending this and delaying other projects that are coming afterwards, they know if they get it up on the board, that project team has seen that risk, and they know they can has at least gotten it to them, if you will, right? And so it's been a great process just utilizing this virtual collaborative tool. Yep, this was a good one where this was on a multi-site quality crisis problem-solving trip that I was coordinating, and we built it quickly on day one of the crisis. Talked with the plants, brainstormed a bunch of causes. The group of staff folks got on a plane and flew while we're in the air. People are doing problem solving and putting information in the tool when we land. We're actually able to look at it, see what things are updated, work with the group, do the Gemba through the facility looking for things, mark some information down, ask some questions of the next facility we're flying to while we're in the air that night or next day. The team is at the next site is already working through the causal tree. When we get there and we're doing the Gemba, we're diving into the details, and we're eventually finding the problem, something that could have taken, a couple of weeks without kind of the digital tool and the easy collaboration behind it. So it's kind of like, in summary, this, like, anything you might do on paper together in a room is something that you can do in the tool. And again, it's kind of like you can execute all the same processes you had, but it's sometimes just a lot better. So these are just some general pictures of boards, again, with the info blanked out there. That's why you just see blank Post-its, but right, some kind of a SWOT type thing. This is one of our OpEx rollout options with our waves that they do. This is what somebody has done within their TPM and OpEx group for structured interviews to really deep dive into mindsets and behaviors. So again, it's kind of whatever you can design. So problem solving, of course, is great. Whether you design your own templates, you use the one in the tool. This gets a little bit close. This isn't a strategy deployment particular example, but it gets a little bit closer to plants and staff really designing what are some of these things that we need to work on now and what we need to work on in the future. And I think when I talked about strategy deployment once briefly, I left out, it was kind of like, with those travel restrictions, you might have, even without travel restrictions, you might have got 30 to 40 people max for a week from the various sites all in a room, in a site together to do strategy deployment for a week. Although the travel or budget restrictions stopped us that year from doing that, and we had to do it virtually, and it's always nice to be together, don't get me wrong, for many reasons, but they were actually able to have like over 300 people throughout the plants and sites participate in strategy deployment because they're all doing it remotely and collaboratively. So it just really, it actually technically opened up how much we could collaborate that way. This here is just an example. I just did this recently. We're working on ideas to improve the culture and things with women in engineering throughout the corporation. So this is a global event, and all these Post-its and some of the affinity and some of the voting all kind of happened honestly within like 30 to 40 minutes. But most of it was all this build and the discussion and setting mindsets and things like that. And the actual brainstorming and affinity was done very fast, right? With a group that, quite honestly, maybe 50% of them had even used the tool before. So we gave 5 minutes of training and they were able to get into it and use it. So lots of ways to simply get in and use it. So global sustainability, again, some brainstorming. One of our business groups, when they get together, kind of like their stand-up meeting, their regular stand-up meeting, what are those things that they're putting up there together and keeping track of as a team? Another timeline example with a lot of connections, kind of pointed out a little more complex one. And this is actually something we're trying recently within the tool, where how do you actually help people? How do you consult with people versus just kind of via email or when somebody reaches out? We're actually building into the tool a space that's a little bit lower, where it's a shared board throughout every virtual room that we have in the tool. And so anybody within the tool, no matter where they are, can go to this board, pop on a question, and either the iObeya support team at Kimberly Clark or the iObeya support team from iObeya can see that and collaborate together. And sometimes that'll drive to something simple like, please just go look at this spot in the help, versus it can be, hey, we got this new capability we want to do here at KC. How can you guys help us implement that? So lots of great ways to just collaborate throughout the corporation. Before I get to that, let's a little bit of last point here. Just wanted to also point out that, obviously everybody's been going through the same thing with COVID and everything the past couple of years. When we kind of went into that environment, I knew that usage of the tool was going to double, and it did quite quickly, with groups and regions around the globe that hadn't ever really even had a chance to use it yet, because a lot of it was a little bit more based on me than any central organization. So it kind of depended on what I could do to internally sell. And so now it's being used all over the globe, and it doesn't even matter that the pandemic is further along and maybe less restrictions, but we've definitely we're coming back to some work, but we've also opened up even a new site where we moved our marketing and sales and finance team to another city from Neenah. And so all this collaboration we had together here, how are we going to keep that? Well, guess what? Over the last 2 years, we've been doing it virtually anyways, because we actually hadn't gone back to the offices for quite nearly exactly 2 years, and opened them up fully. So now that these folks have maybe moved to another city, or we've got brand new people in that other city, we're pretty much able to do the exact same level of collaboration we've had for the past few years, and maybe get together once in a while to actually do some team building, which is always important. So I talk a little bit about respect for people. Think about it. We want our people creating value, right? We don't want them writing Post-its or rewriting Post-its, on different boards in different rooms in different buildings, having to walk to do that, right? Leaders, if they get used to seeing information this way in the tool, they can go in and look whenever they want. You don't have to create special presentations for them. Information's right there if it's kind of built in the standards the organization is used to. And leaders can show respect for people by adding notes to the work, right? Hey, you guys put this out there. I'm just going to add some thoughts, right? Even if I only add one or two, at least that means, hey, I've looked at it. You've seen that I've looked at it and kind of checked in on you, right? So it's a way to do that leader standard work in a way, even if the leader can't be physically at the meeting that they're running. It definitely reduces emails. Hey, what'd you guys discuss? Hey, where'd you guys get on that action, right? I just click a link, it opens up, I can see, oh, we said yes, yes, no, no, follow up, and this person's got it, and here's the due date, right? I can just go look if I couldn't make the meeting, right? So it's when you really think about this, it's a great effective. Yeah, I think my statement is, no matter what digital tool you're using, an effective digital tool really enables that delivery of respect for the work and respect for the people in today's global and multi-site business environment. So so getting back here just to the kind of the key thoughts that I wanted you to take away today. So digital versus paper, or just visual management in general, right? I have, again, started out very fundamental, was very much against going digital, saw how much people loved it, saw all the effectiveness and engagement that it could drive, and quickly turned around and said, this is more efficient, more effective, and more engaging even than all the great work we've done to build a paper digital visual management environment. Really builds upon that respect for people foundation. And so the iObeya tool, it's something where it doesn't dictate the process for you. You still have to develop a good process, right? The tool isn't magic. The right thinking still has to be there. So when we think about all the fundamentals we learn, the right thinking still has to be there for the organization. And the tool simply enhances your ability to execute that process. So with that, I want to say thank you for listening today. And I don't know if Alice has been monitoring to see if there's any questions in there. Happy to answer a few here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Patrick, for sharing your experience on iObeya with us. it was interesting to see the changes that you ran through when going from classic Obeya to our digital solution, and see the continuous improvement you've been doing for all these years. And since we are not too many on this session, but we kept the better ones, I can propose you to take the mic and ask the questions to Patrick in live and make this Q&A more living, right?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could start. Thank you very much, Patrick. Really interesting. I recognize Brian Wozniak on one of your screens as well.
Oh, yes.
So I know Brian, working with Brian at the moment. One thing that really stands out, I've got this highlighted, and it'll help me, is I would have previously said, as I'm working on evolving the practice within a group, that it's going to make delivery of value more likely. But then you've kind of put an extra angle on it and said effective delivery of respect. So that's another important thing that for the group that I'm working with. So it's like a different angle on that. So thank you.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably not just readily apparent when you start doing stuff in the tool. You're like, boy, this didn't stand up and say, well, this is respect. It was me stepping back and really reflecting on everything as a whole and saying, wow, if I really look at this, it really does deliver that. So, yep, great. Glad to hear that.
I see another question on the chat. The question is, how do you know what matters most, since it seems like the data depicted is quite dense?
So like on some of the ones where there's just huge amounts of Post-its or a very busy timeline or things like that, yes. Again, it kind of goes to how do you design your process and what's important to the process. So if it's important to highlight something, you might make a certain Post-it a certain color, or you might make certain images, little stickers that you add to those Post-its or areas of the board that really call out, hey, critical area to look at. Like sometimes I use a fire symbol that I pasted in from Google Images or something like that. And you can just change from, hey, I have 50 yellow Post-its and here's the 5 that are important. I'm going to change them. The other way is in the tool itself, there's all kinds of functionality for voting and doing some other things there to just kind of bring that information forward and look at. In fact, I have an image of it that I could easily download and blank out, but we have a process where we have a weekly meeting, cross-functional one. It's really just kind of a business inform, lots of information on it, but it's usually a 50 to 90 person like stand-up meeting, if you will. Even in person, there's quite a few folks that do go. And there's also this little preview option, so that when you're talking with, the salesperson is giving an update on these 2 Post-its that are on the board. Yeah, you can't necessarily see what's there, but you can pop them up really easily, big on the screen for everyone to see. And if you compare that to the 40 to 50 person stand-up meeting that's standing around a board, they can't see the graph you're talking about, right? From the distance or behind people. They can't see the Post-it with the information on you're talking about. So it's important. You have to listen to the person, right? But sometimes if you can make that graph visual or that financial walk or something like that more palatable, especially to a broad group that maybe doesn't work with it every day and can't catch the acronyms or what it really means just by listening to somebody talk. This tool actually, if it's up on a big screen in front of everybody, enables them to be much more engaged in the process and get more out of it. So I don't know if that helps whoever asked the question there in the chat.
That helped. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Quick question from my side. Patrick, first of all, thank you very much for that presentation. Very enlightening. They're both dealing with the digital side. First question was, given what the connection that Tim spoke about and how, being in the room, gives that extra connection. I'm just wondering, how did you convince the team, or what did you see as the need to change that to digital, and maybe sacrificing that connection, maybe not? And the second was touch, which is taking digital and then not just displaying, information, but actually manipulating digital content? Those are my two questions.
Yeah. So the first one, so the pre-pandemic, right, where there were even less, I guess you call them constraints that would force us to go to digital, but we still had a couple come up, excuse me, like I said, kind of with the construction and the physical space. That was one thing I invested in at that time as we rebuilt that design. I said, I don't want to lose that stand-up culture. We don't want people actually just sitting at their desks all around the building if they're here, right? If they're here, want them to walk over, get together and try that, right? And we still want people interacting with the information, right? That felt like a key principle. And so we bought big touch screens where everybody can just plug their laptop in no matter what meeting they're in. And no matter what typical, they got all their shortcuts right there ready to go, right? And so they just plug in and go. And I definitely saw both different avenues where people really got into having fun using the touchscreen and interacting in a meeting, and people ran certain types of meetings that was much more efficient if they're just standing there on a laptop with a mouse. So sometimes when you're building 100 Post-its, doing it on a touchscreen doesn't work very well. A large giant one, sorry, but working on your computer is very effective. So yeah, I think we still value getting together, and certainly after 2 years, boy, I love being back in the office, hearing what people are talking about, right? And being able to connect and say, I can help with that. I can help with that. Have you used iObeya for that? And so I missed that so much over the last couple of years. You can't do that over instant message very easy with people you aren't talking with in meetings every day. And so I don't want to discount that at all. It's so important to be together where you can, when you can, and how often you can. But there's also so many times when we can't. And when it just isn't efficient to do that, whether it be for travel costs, whether it be for weekly or every other day meetings or something like that, with teams in various locations, it's just a lot better. And so this tool just really enables that, or probably any digital tool for us definitely enables that. And then I'm sorry, you were talking about just kind of like manipulation of the data. Super simple and easy. I think I talked about like just training people that haven't never used the tool, giving them 5 minutes. I'm talking about leaders, right? I'd go and be like, hey, give me 5 minutes. Click on this link, click here, click here, click here. That's what you have to do every month before this meeting. Okay, I got it. Right. So from that standpoint, it's actually very easy and simple for people to use. Doing some of the deep designs that you maybe saw, some things that I've put together, obviously a little more involved in depth, but once you kind of know where to click, it's actually really simple as well. And the cool thing is, again, I talked about that 40 to 50 or 40 to 90 person meeting. They can all be in there at the same time, touching and moving Post-its, adding Post-its. It might get a little messy if 90 people are touching it at once, but a single board. But yeah, people can all interact together is the major draw of the tool. You don't have to wait. You don't have to tell the person on the other end of the line, hey, can you type that into Excel? No, you typed that wrong. No, you still typed that wrong. You don't have to do that iteration. You just type it yourself and it pops up you just drag it to where it goes, right? So you don't have to be going through that awkwardness over the phone with somebody. So, I don't know.
Thank you. Yeah, tremendously insightful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do we have more questions or? Yeah, I think that you answered the most to them. Thank you all for being here. It was really pleasant to see you disengaging. I think we can call it a day, and we can return to the lobby to have the outro from Bart and Dolph.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate it.
You bet. Bye.
Bye.